I have here a reasonable facsimile of an exponential graph. Drew it kind of carefully so I don't get my usual glitch when I start getting steeper. And I've labeled, I've given you coordinates of 4 pairs of points. Each pair of points is going to result in a different exponential function. Okay, so this is your general exponential function. I've just constructed it by picking any point. I won't even say which point I started with. Could have started with any point on this curve. I picked a doubling distance, and whatever that doubling distance was, I proceeded accordingly in the same manner to which you should have become accustomed. Hopefully you have become accustomed by now. So this is a general graph that can represent any exponential function of the form y equals a times b to the x. Now, I've specified points 4, 3, and 8, 6. I wrote these in green, and if you're not colorblind, you can see the 2 green points on the graph, and those would be the points 4, 3, and 8, 6. Okay, and see if that makes sense. I'm not going to label all these points. Things will get too cluttered. I'll label a few of them. I'll probably end up labeling those 2, but we'll see. -2, 5, and 4, 40. Okay, and those are in red, here and here. 1, 7, and 32, 30. 1, 7 here, 32, 30 here. And that can't possibly be 32. I have to change that number. It's obviously not 32. This is 1. That's not 32, and I think I kind of doubled things without thinking. I think that should be 530. Maybe 630. I think it'd be 630. Okay, so I'll change that 32 to 6. And then -1, 12. That would be here, and 4.5. 40, that would be here. Okay? Now, what I'm asking you to do is find the values of a and b that make this function fit those points. Okay, there are 2 parameters in this equation. A is a parameter and B is a parameter. These are just parameters or numbers that can be adjusted to make something fit. Okay, so A and B can be adjusted to make these 2 points fit. And the process is going to involve simply obtaining an equation for each point. And each point will give us an equation with unknowns A and B, and then we simply solve the equations simultaneously. And I'm actually going to do that for the first 2 points. So, I've got already in green written up here y equals a b to the x. The first point is 4, 3. Okay, well, 4 is the x value, 3 is the y value, so I can substitute 3 for y, 4 for x. So I have 3 equals a times b to the 4th. X value 4 has been substituted for x. The y value 3 has been substituted for y. Okay, perfectly good equation. Then I have the point 8, 6. Okay, well, doing the same thing, being careful which one goes where, because see, y comes first here, but y comes second here. And I don't know about you, but if I'm not thinking, I'll mix those up. So I've got to be careful, and hopefully you will too. So you get 6 equals a times b to the 8th. Okay? Now, we can solve these 2 equations for a and b because we have 2 equations with unknowns a and b. And we're going to use the method of, now there are 2 methods that we can use. We have substitution, or we can divide one equation by the other. I think I'm going to illustrate both. But first, you should write these equations down. Pause the video. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to do another video. I'm going to go ahead and do this. But work it out yourself. See if you can solve these equations. And as I proceed here, once you think you see what to do, if you don't in the first place, stop the video and work it out. Don't just sit back and watch me work it out. You don't learn much from doing that. The best you can do if you sit and watch me, and of course this depends on how you assimilate information and so forth. But in most cases, if you sit and watch me, that's a passive thing, and then you're going to try to imitate it and reconstruct the steps and so forth, and that's a valid way to learn. But much better if you move out ahead, think about what the next step would be before you see me do the next step. Okay? Now, hopefully you paused and attempted to solve this. Okay, so I'm going to solve it by substitution. By it, I mean the system. Okay, I'm going to solve the first equation for A. Now, as soon as I said that, I would hope that you would write down the first equation and solve it for A, or at least do that in your head, which you should be able to do fairly easily. I divide both sides by b to the fourth, and I get A equals 3 divided by b to the fourth. Now, I haven't written down all the steps of that. You really should write down 3 equals A times b to the fourth. Under that, 3 over b to the fourth equals excuse me, A times b to the fourth over b to the fourth. And then you see that the b to the fourth divides b to the fourth and gives you 1, which multiplied by A gives you A. Otherwise, you're doing your mathematics by superstition rather than by rules. You should really do that, at least in your head, and justify it to yourself. Okay, any case, it's pretty obvious, and I think just about everybody's going to be able to solve this. When I say solve for A, you're going to think move b to the fourth over here. As long as you can justify that by a rule, I have no problem with it. But be sure you're always justifying these steps about move this here and cross this out and do that. Okay, we get A equals 3 over b to the fourth. And then we substitute that into the second equation. And what do we get? We get 6 equals A times b to the eighth, but A is 3 over b to the fourth times b to the eighth. And now we solve for b. What do we get? Well, b to the eighth divided by b to the fourth, you got 8 b's multiplied together in the numerator, 4 b's multiplied together in the denominator. You can group 4 of the ones in the numerator with the 4 in the denominator, and you have 4 b's divided by 4 b's. That's b's multiplied, not 4 times b, which gives you 1. It leaves you a b to the fourth, and you get then 6 equals 3b to the fourth. You divide both sides by 3. I'm not going to write that step down, and I'm going to reverse the sides. You get b to the fourth equals 2. And what does this give you? It gives you b equals the fourth root of 2. Okay? And the fourth root of 2 is, I'm going to estimate, it's pretty close to 1.2 because 1.2 squared is 1.44. The square root of 2 is 1.414. So I'm saying if we go down to 1.19 or maybe even 1.18, somewhere between 1.18 and 1.9, we're going to get the fourth root of 2. And if you don't understand what I just said, replay it, write it down, and think it, because your algebra should be up to that reasoning at this point, and your numerical reasoning. Okay, you might not know how I got all those numbers, but understand the algebra of it. Okay, well, substitute back and find A. So we can take this value of B and we can plug it in right here. And what's that going to give us? That's going to give us A equals 3 over, and actually I don't want to plug this value in, I want to plug the square root of 2, fourth root of 2 in. I get 3 over the fourth root of 2, put that raised to the fourth. And you see why I didn't want to put the 1.19 in there, or whatever the number would be, because this is going to come out real nicely. And we find that A equals 3/2. So our model, and our model then is f of x equals 3/2 multiplied by b, which is the fourth root of 2, raised to the x. And you could say that's approximately 3/2 multiplied by 1.19 raised to the x. So we have a model for this function. Now, one other way we could have done this is we start, well, we divide the first equation. Let's divide the second equation by the first. So an alternative solution, divide the second equation by the first. Now I'm going to do this a little more quickly. If I divide second equation by the first, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then what? Well, a times b to the 8th divided by a times b to the 4th. The a's divide out, and we have b to the 8th over b to the 4th, and we see that equals b to the 4th. So b has to equal the fourth root of 2. This is a little quicker and more efficient than what I did here. Not all that much, but it's helpful. Then we substitute that into either equation. And we get 3 equals a times fourth root of 2 raised to the 4th. And there's just a little work to do there, and I'll let you puzzle over that. It shouldn't be difficult, because the fourth root of 2 raised to the 4th is 2. So we get 3 equals a times 2, and we then very quickly get a equals 3/2. Okay? Well, the same process is going to work for each of these points, so you need to run that through for each pair of points. I said for each of these points, for each pair of points. We can do the same thing. We get the two simultaneous equations. We can solve it by substitution. We can solve it by dividing one equation by another, which eliminates the variable a. So that's actually a process of elimination.